If you're waiting to hear a sincere "I'm sorry" from a woman, get ready. It might never come the way you imagine. Strange? Controversial? Yes. But this is exactly where the psychological game of relationships begins, the one almost no one dares to reveal. Over the years, I noticed that most men follow advice that sabotages them more than it helps. They're told to always be understanding, never demand anything, accept everything in silence. And the result? You lose respect, you lose charisma, and attraction evaporates. Meanwhile, you're still wondering why she avoids saying a single word that could change everything. And here lies the secret. It's not about pride or lack of love, but about internal, emotional, and even evolutionary mechanisms that shape female behavior. When you understand this hidden logic, you stop feeling rejected and begin to see what's really behind the silence. Now tell me, do you really want to discover what goes through her mind when she doesn't apologize, and how that can completely transform the way you relate? Then stay with me, because I'm about to show you an invisible game that will change your entire perspective on psychology, respect, and attraction. Core problem and thesis. You know those kinds of tips floating around in self-help books, motivational videos, or even bar conversations that actually do more harm than good? Exactly. When it comes to relationships, a lot of men are given recommendations that, in practice, erode the very respect they're trying to build. Female psychology is full of nuances, and when misinterpreted, it creates distance instead of attraction. The central point is simple. There's massive confusion between what seems like good practice and what really generates connection. Many believe that always being agreeable, swallowing their pride, or over-explaining brings harmony. But the effect is usually the opposite: devaluation. Charisma fades when a man projects emotional weakness instead of steady presence. Think about it. Maybe you've already experienced this. You followed that advice to always be understanding, never demand anything, or even apologize for things you didn't do, only to notice the relationship growing cold. Psychology explains this phenomenon. When a man erases his identity just to avoid conflict, he loses the very respect that sustains him. And there's more. Many women, in turn, avoid giving genuine apologies in intimate situations. Not because they're cold, but because there are deep internal mechanisms influencing this difficulty. This directly affects how men perceive fairness, creating the dilemma: if she never apologizes, does she really respect me? Here emerges the thesis: understanding the invisible game of female behavior isn't a cheap trick, but a key to silent power. The man who grasps this dynamic stops falling into emotional traps and begins to spark true attraction, sustained by charisma and clarity of boundaries. Personal experience as a trigger. With years of experience being a woman and working with women, I honestly can't remember how many ever told me they apologize in their relationships. It's as if the word sorry, in an intimate context, gets stuck in the throat. Even when the mistake was clear, even when the partner suffered because of it, the tendency was to escape through silence or by offering a substitute gesture. That always intrigued me, because it reveals something deeper happening in the psychology of female behavior. This absence wasn't just about the man's wounded pride on the other side. It was about how we, as women, develop emotional defense, mechanisms that often sound contradictory. A man, for example, expects that, "I was wrong, forgive me," as a signal of respect and fairness inside the relationship. But instead of hearing that, he often gets an affectionate gesture at the wrong moment, a sudden change of subject, or even a sexual approach used as a repair tool. And the most curious part is realizing that these gestures aren't necessarily coldness or manipulation. In fact, they're instinctive attempts to ease emotional tension, ways of maintaining the bond without having to face the vulnerability that admitting fault demands. For the man, this lack of explicit recognition may feel like devaluation. For the woman, however, it's simply a way of avoiding a confrontation that seems bigger than it actually is. 3 male misconceptions. No apology means no love. The first mistake many men make is believing that the absence of apologies means a lack of love. This interpretation comes from male psychology, which values clear rules, fairness, and direct confrontation. For men, if someone makes a mistake, the proof of respect is in explicitly acknowledging it. For female behavior, though, the logic may be different. Repairing the emotion matters more than verbalizing guilt. She's trying to manipulate me. The second common mistake is assuming that when a woman doesn't apologize, she's deliberately trying to manipulate. It's true that some gestures, bringing his favorite food, using humor, or seeking intimacy, can seem like avoidance. But in reality, they're unconscious strategies of emotional repair. A man who doesn't understand this hidden code tends to see manipulation where, many times, there is only a different effort to preserve the bond. No woman ever admits when she's wrong. The third mistake is concluding that women never admit when they're wrong. This generalized view undermines attraction and blocks the possibility of genuine dialogue. Many women are capable of apologizing, but usually in contexts where they feel safe, not judged and valued. What many men fail to create is exactly that environment of trust, where feminine vulnerability won't later be used against them. The apology paradox. Everyday versus intimate. If we look closely, there's a curious paradox. In social situations, in traffic, at work, or even in a supermarket line, women tend to apologize more than men. It's almost automatic to hear a quick sorry for minor things, like bumping into someone. These small apologies cost nothing, act as social lubricant, and even boost a bit of charisma. But when it comes to intimate relationships, that frequency simply disappears. The contrast is striking because it's precisely in moments where an apology could make a real difference, when there's hurt, frustration, or broken trust, that it becomes rare. Psychology explains, what for a man is just admitting a mistake, for a woman can feel like putting her image of reliability within the relationship at risk. That's why she avoids it. The closer the intimacy, the harder it is to admit guilt. This reveals a dynamic men often don't understand. In public, the word sorry serves as conflict prevention. In private, it's seen as exposing vulnerability. And this game of opposites fuels misunderstandings. He expects verbal repair in the intimate space, while she offers that same repair only in the social one. It's in this mismatch that the invisible conflict arises, quietly corroding the relationship from the inside. Social sorry. Acknowledgement of guilt. When a woman lets out that everyday sorry, it's often just a way of signaling that she's not a threat. It's like saying, relax, it's fine, I don't want to fight. This kind of social apology has little to do with real responsibility. It's more of an automatic gesture of politeness. It works as a free pass in quick interactions but carries no emotional weight. In the intimate field, however, the story changes completely. A true apology would require taking responsibility, acknowledging the impact of the mistake, and committing to change. That package comes with a much heavier psychological cost. Unlike a casual "my bad" on the street, here the word has to come with accountability. And that's precisely where many women freeze, because admitting fault feels like exposing vulnerability that might later be used against them. This contrast explains why so many men get confused. They see their partners apologizing in small social situations, but when conflict happens at home, they're met with silence. The result is a clash of perceptions. For him, the absence of apology means lack of respect. For her, it's self-preservation. And it's in that difference where the root of much male frustration in relationships lies. The psychological evolutionary cost of admitting guilt in an intimate relationship isn't just about words. It's about emotional risks and even ancient instincts. For many women, offering a genuine apology triggers the fear of losing support, affection, or even protection. Evolutionary psychology suggests that in ancestral contexts, admitting fault before a partner could mean abandonment in critical moments. That instinct still echoes, even in modern times. Because of this, female behavior tends to develop strategies for preventing conflict rather than confronting it directly. The social sorry in daily life works as a cheap shield, with no real psychological cost. But when the mistake involves intimacy, the weight is different. It feels like exposing vulnerability that could be turned against her later. In that moment, attraction and respect are both at stake. This is where the deadlock arises. While men seek verbal accountability to feel fairness, women pull back to protect themselves from a judgment that could leave them at a disadvantage. This difference, with deep evolutionary roots, continues shaping modern relationship dynamics. And when it's not understood, it breeds frustration on both sides, fueling the silent conflict that seems never ending. Side effect: the sorry word. Emptied with the constant use of social sorry in trivial situations, the word ends up losing part of its weight. It's like currency that circulates too much. The more it's repeated, the less value it seems to hold. When a woman says sorry for bumping into someone, tripping, or interrupting, there's no real acknowledgement of guilt, just a polite signal. But in an intimate relationship, this has an unexpected effect. The man who hears his partner using that word so often in daily life expects her to use it as well when real mistakes occur inside the relationship. But when that moment arrives, silence prevails. The contrast is glaring. On one side, an abundance of superficial apologies. On the other, almost total absence when it actually matters. Female behavior, without meaning to, ends up emptying the word of its true strength. And here lies the frustration. While he expects an apology as a sign of respect and connection, she feels the word no longer carries the same role in the intimate space. This mismatch makes sorry become a broken code between the two. And without a shared code, the risk is greater distance, quietly eroding charisma and attraction. Differences in defining the problem. Here's where a clash of perspectives completely scrambles communication in relationships. For many men, the problem is clear. There was a wrong behavior. Therefore, the mistake needs to be acknowledged and corrected. They approach the situation almost like an equation of justice. For many women, however, the focus isn't on the act itself, but on the emotional impact it created. For them, the problem is the pain that was felt, not necessarily the objective cause. This creates curious situations. Imagine being late for a dinner. For him, the error is the lateness itself, and the solution would be an explicit apology. For her, the delay matters less than the negative mood that followed. So instead of recognizing the fault, she may try to lighten the atmosphere, start a cheerful conversation, or even offer affection. Her goal isn't to correct the delay, but to erase the bad feeling left behind. This contrast in definitions leaves both speaking different languages. He seeks justice and accountability. She seeks emotional repair. Neither is wrong. They're just looking at different sides of the same coin. And as long as this difference goes unnoticed, each attempt at resolution only fuels frustration, opening the door for the vicious cycle that soon follows. Female strategies of emotional repair. When there isn't an explicit apology, many women resort to repair strategies that work more on the emotional than on the rational level. It's common to offer sex, prepare his favorite meal, give unexpected affection, crack a joke, or simply give space until the tension cools down. These are ways of restoring the chemistry of the bond, triggering hormones like oxytocin and lowering the partner's stress. In this sense, female behavior seeks to ease emotional pain without necessarily addressing the mistake itself. The problem is that, for many men, this kind of gesture feels like evasion. He senses that the essential, the acknowledgement of the fault, was ignored, while she believes she's already fixing the damage by rebuilding the couple's well-being. It's as if they're playing the same game with different rules. Attraction and charisma may hold for a while, but the absence of explicit accountability slowly undermines long-term trust. How men interpret these strategies. For many men, these repair gestures, a sudden kiss, a favorite dish on the table, an intimate night, sound like attempts to dodge the main issue. He thinks, she doesn't want to face the mistake. She just wants me to forget it. Male psychology, being more oriented toward clear rules and objective fairness, tends to interpret such attitudes as manipulation or even silent disrespect. The absence of a direct, "I'm sorry," weighs heavier than any gesture. Meanwhile, the woman believes she's demonstrating care and love through those actions. For her, restoring the mood is the priority, because female behavior usually values emotional harmony over direct confrontation. This mismatch makes him even more frustrated, feeling nothing was acknowledged, while she is surprised at his lack of acceptance. The result? Both feel misunderstood, as if they're speaking different languages within the same relationship. The vicious cycle of conflict. This mismatch creates a cycle that's hard to break. She tries to heal the emotional side with gestures of affection, humor, or intimacy. Yet he still feels the lack of verbal acknowledgement of the fault. His frustration grows because, from a male perspective, nothing has truly been resolved. He wanted justice but received consolation instead. This silent difference slowly erodes respect. Faced with his dissatisfaction, she doubles down on the same gestures. More care, more affection, more distractions. But to him, this only reinforces the sense of avoidance. With each round, the gap between intention and perception widens. What started as an attempt at closeness becomes fuel for resentment. Without realizing it, both end up trapped in an emotional maze that keeps repeating itself. Detailed evolutionary. Context in ancestral environments. When survival depended on harmony within the group, women developed strategies to reduce the risks of confrontation. Nurturing gestures, like preparing food, and physical intimacy worked as biological shortcuts to ease tensions. These behaviors released oxytocin, lowered cortisol, and created a sense of safety. It was a practical way to restore peace without exposing vulnerability through an explicit apology. Men, on the other hand, shaped by roles of competition and defense, came to value clear rules, well-defined hierarchies, and direct confrontation to resolve disputes. Respect among men was built through the courage to admit mistakes and correct course. This heritage still echoes today. While women prefer gestures to soothe the emotional climate, men look for words that confirm responsibility. Both instincts are legitimate, but they clash when unrecognized. The paradox of female vulnerability. Those who invest more emotionally in a relationship usually feel more afraid of losing it. For many women, admitting guilt feels like handing a weapon to their partner, something that could be used against them in a future argument. That's why they often avoid explicit apologies and turn instead to other forms of repair. Psychology shows that this strategy is more about self-preservation than a lack of respect. On top of that, there's the weight of the emotional load many women carry within the relationship. They are often the ones managing the atmosphere, anticipating problems, and trying to maintain harmony. When they already feel overwhelmed, an apology may sound like an additional burden. This mix of fear and exhaustion creates a paradox. The more they care, the harder it becomes to admit vulnerability, the economy of respect. In relationships, apologizing when you're wrong works like a rare currency. When a woman takes that step, the effect is often powerful. The man sees self-awareness, courage, and trustworthiness. Respect grows because he feels he's not the only one fighting for the integrity of the relationship. Attraction, in fact, tends to increase, since vulnerability, when well used, creates deep connection. But when apologies are constantly avoided, the currency stops circulating. Repeated silence starts to erode trust and admiration. The man feels he always has to carry the weight of responsibility, while she seems to dodge it. Little by little, this absence undermines the charisma of the relationship, making room for frustration and distance. It's like an economy in crisis. The more investment is avoided, the faster respect evaporates. When an apology is, and isn't, appropriate. Not every disagreement requires an apology. There are situations where conflict arises simply from differences of opinion or minor day-to-day tensions. In those cases, what resolves things is dialogue, patience, and sometimes humor. Forcing an "I'm sorry" where there was no real transgression can even feel fake and wear down the relationship further. Here, it's important to understand that silence doesn't always mean avoidance. It can simply mean respecting the other's space. On the other hand, when there is a clear mistake, crossing a boundary, showing disregard, or causing unnecessary pain, a genuine apology becomes essential. Recognizing the fault, taking responsibility, and proposing change are gestures that strengthen the bond. Female behavior at this point needs to align emotional care with accountability. That balance is what keeps both attraction and respect alive. Integration of approaches. The secret to a healthy relationship isn't choosing between emotional repair or clear accountability, but learning to integrate both. Female behavior adds value when it seeks reconnection through affection, and male behavior gains strength by demanding clarity and fairness. Together, these elements form a kind of bridge. One side offers warmth, the other structure. When they walk side by side, the relationship finds balance. Imagine a conflict situation. She might start by offering emotional closeness to ease the tension, while he, after feeling the atmosphere lighten, opens space for a true apology to happen. This integration transforms the dynamic. Psychology shows that when connection and accountability meet, attraction grows, charisma holds steady, and respect doesn't fade. It's in this combination that a relationship gains consistency. Practical steps for men. The key is learning to value gestures of emotional repair without giving up on accountability. When she offers affection, humor, or presence after a conflict, this should be seen as a demonstration of care, not just avoidance. Accepting these signals helps keep the bond light and preserves attraction. At the same time, it's important to make clear that verbal acknowledgement also matters, because that's how respect and trust remain balanced. Another crucial step is creating safety so that a woman doesn't feel her apology will be used against her. If every admitted mistake turns into ammunition for future arguments, she'll never feel comfortable opening up. When a man stands firm but also shows receptiveness, he conveys both charisma and strength. This posture not only increases the chance of hearing a genuine "I'm sorry," but also deepens the emotional connection. Communication, one of the most delicate aspects, is timing. Often, a woman will offer emotional repair first, as a way to lower the temperature of the conflict. Only afterward might there be room for a genuine apology. If a man demands acknowledgement immediately, he may end up blocking that natural process. Patience in this case becomes a powerful tool. Another important detail is how to merge the two languages. A phrase like, "I know I hurt you and I'm sorry. I want to do something for you," carries both elements, accountability and emotional care. When both understand that there are different styles of resolution, communication becomes clearer. Relationship psychology shows that, at this point, attraction doesn't just return. It intensifies, because both partners feel respected and connected. If this content made sense to you, go ahead and hit the like button, subscribe to the channel, and turn on the notification bell. That helps me a lot to keep bringing this type of video your way. And of course, I'll be waiting for you in the comments. Share your experiences with me there, because your perspective might open other people's eyes.